Hi everyone, welcome. This is my first weekly video. I'm going to do this as a response to your questions and also as just a sort of a course update, I suppose, going over some of the administrative things that we have to deal with in the course, any matters arising during the week. There'll be quite a lengthy section of the video today, but usually going forward, there'll be just much more about the response to your questions. I want to start off with the book. Well, start off with the book here. This is the book that we should have, that you should all have. It's the first edition, but it was actually the only edition when the course was designed and sort of made, right? Which was only, I did this sort of over Christmas when I went back into my office in the first, for the first class, the first day of classes. I also teach here on campus. I found a second edition. And I think some of you I saw on Slack, and I think I saw perhaps from your questions as well, that some of you have the second edition. That's not going to work so well for this class. All of the reading assignments that are in the modules right now, they're all based on the table of contents of this green one, this first edition. And so if you have that second edition, in fact, looking at the second edition, lots of the readings that we're doing are not in there. Well, that's a bit of a cheat. I've only looked at the first chapter and half. Only one out of the two readings that we're doing are in there, in that second edition. So, and it's not 1.2. Or it's 1.1 is 1.1, but 1.2 is not the reading that we're doing. If you're looking at 1.2 in the second edition, if you're looking at 1.2 in the first edition, this green book, then you're good. That's what we're using, right? It was on the syllabus. It is on the syllabus, I should say. It was on my ASU as you were signing up for classes, but I recognize that if you signed up for a class in the last couple of days, then you wouldn't have had time to get the book. The other thing that I recognize is that I was speaking to the library, and apparently they, the ASU bookstore, I think, not the library, the bookstore, they started giving out the second edition when they ran out of first edition books, which, because I'm teaching this on campus as well, and so that was not so helpful because it's a different book. And so I'll say the course is heavily based on this book. You won't really do well in the class. I mean, I don't think you'll do well at all if you don't have this book. If you don't have it, get it as soon as you can. If you can't or won't get it, it's probably best not to continue with the class. It's going to be very difficult. These videos here, I'm going to make one of these every week, and in this video I will talk about the readings, because what I'll do mostly is I'll look at the questions that you've asked, and I'll pull some of them out. I've pulled about 5 of them out for today, and we'll go through those, and I'll give you my answers, and my answers are often very much just trying to figure out how the author might answer your question, right, according to what is written in our readings. It mostly is he, sometimes it's a she. And sort of give you that as a response. Maybe adding a little bit of my own opinion every now and again, right? Because that's always interesting, and I think I have good opinions. And these are the author's opinions right now. Anyway, so these videos will be that. There'll be me talking a little bit about, hey, this is the right book. Hey, we're going to have an exam. Here's what I noticed in the quizzes, right? So there'll be a little bit of me doing that for the first few minutes each time. But the majority of this video is going to be me. From the reading, I feel like I'm pretty grounded in this reading, answering your questions and discussing your questions, at least, if not answering them. That might help you with the quiz, right? But if you haven't read the book, the quiz is going to be very difficult, even with these videos, right? These videos are sort of designed to be highly recommended, but not completely required to watch them. If you've read the book, you've read the readings in the book, you feel very happy, you've probably have a look over people's questions, because that does influence what comes up on the quiz. I make the quizzes sort of while reading your questions. But again, but all the answers to all the questions can be found in the book, right? Because your questions are based on the book as well. The book is the foundation of the class. If you're not reading, if you don't have the book, you're not going to do well. You won't do well. You might. This is possible with the quizzes, right? With the quizzes, which come every week, and they come on Friday, they open on the Wednesday, and if you've understood the reading and everything in the book, you have the book with you, you can probably complete the quiz when it comes out. If you want to wait till Thursday till you get this video, that might also help you, but it might not be required. If you've read the book and you like haven't understood a thing, probably read it again. You should. But if you're kind of in the middle of having understood nothing and having understood everything, this video might be the most useful to you. Because we'll talk about a few of the concepts in there. Yeah, the quizzes. Yeah, so the quizzes you can. I'm not policing the quizzes. They're not proctored or anything like that. The quizzes, the exams are, and so this is why I'm saying, if you want to use your book or your notes or the internet or whatever it is for the quizzes, don't have anybody else take the quiz. It has to be you taking it. But I don't mind if you use notes and books and that sort of, and even the internet. But my warning is, right, that the answers to the quizzes are based on the book, right? Unless you're reading the readings from this book elsewhere, which is possible in most cases. That's what I was going to suggest, actually, breaking off from that a little bit. If you have not got this book and for some reason you have no way of getting the book, or at least in the short term have no way. If you have no way of getting the book, you should probably leave the course, because it's going to be very, very difficult. If it's like, oh, it's going to come but not in time for the module 2 or something like that, then I would say this: have a look, find the contents of this book, find out what the readings are, find out the titles of them, search for them on the internet. Especially these first couple of weeks, these first few weeks, you'll be able to find them in some form, probably on the internet. I don't exactly know where, so don't email me and ask for the link or for me to download them or anything, but they're probably out there. The first few. The ones later on might well not be available, or they'll be behind a paywall or something. So, because they're not as popular, they're not as well known as these first ones. The module 1, Katzenstein and Huntington, very well known, best-selling best-selling novel. It's not novel. Best-selling book, right? From Huntington, The Clash of Civilizations. It's very popular. And also the Katzenstein response to that is also very, very accessible, very, very findable, I should say. Moving forward, we'll talk about realism. So we'll have Thomas Hobbes, that sort of thing. I mean, that's out there. You can get that. But as time goes on, it's going to be much, much harder to do that. The other thing with that, the other problem with that, why that's a much more inferior strategy rather than just buying the book. There it is again, it's green. Is that in the book it's abridged. So we've taken, the Clash of Civilizations. It was an article, then it was a book. We read like a couple of pages in here, right? The book's 200 pages or something, right? So it's much more condensed. You're getting a lot of the good, solid information, that the essence of it is condensed for us here. So even if you read the article, you'd be reading probably 10 times as much as you would be in this book and getting about the same, I would imagine, unless you're a very deep reader who cares a lot. What we have in this book is, and certainly for the quizzes and everything, I'm only using the information that's in this book anyway. So if you're looking on the internet or something with the quiz, this is going back to our other thread now, the quiz thread. If you're using the internet, you might get some weird answers that we can't control what goes on the internet, that might lead you in a wrong place. The other thing why I think you should, here's what I'm advising. You can use your book. I advise you don't use the book, you don't use your notes, you don't use anything. My advice is that because in the midterm and in the final, it's proctored, you'll be filmed doing it. You're not allowed books, you're not allowed notes. If you have to show the whole room, you have to show the floor, you have to show the whole environment that you're in, that you have no notes and no book, and you watch the whole time, right? So you also have to identify yourself. It has to be you taking it. So, and that's worth 50% of your grade, the midterm and the final. And so if you can answer the quizzes without using your notes, or without trying to find the answers on the internet, or without reading in the book, if you can do that, then you'll do well on the exams. If you can't, if you're going to be looking for everything, look everything up, then you'll do well on the quiz, right? But that's 20% of your grade for all the quizzes, right? And then you can't pass the class like that. So the midterm and the final will be, half of the questions will be like quiz questions, and they'll either be the exact same as the quiz questions that you've already answered, or they'll be very similar to them. The other half of the exam will be an essay, right? So that will be more you'll have to have a bit of a deeper understanding of the reading. So make sure you do that, the reading. All right, so that's that done. All the assignments are accessible through Canvas. All these questions go into the module section. One or two people emailed me and said, "Oh, I don't know how to get into Beagle." Don't worry about access to Beagle. Don't worry about getting into Beagle. Pretend Beagle doesn't even exist. Don't do the exercises, right? And do read that section of the syllabus and make sure you're aware of what's expected of you. But everything that you have to fill in, the step 1, the step 2 of the perspective questions and of the curiosity questions, it's all on Canvas. And it's all in those modules and it's all laid out for you. So it's there. Don't worry. Don't think you have to go somewhere else and do it. You don't. If you do, that's some sort of a computer malfunction, and you should get that sorted out. But probably not with me, because I don't expect that to happen. That's not what happens when I click on the exercises in my Canvas. It gets straight to the exercise. And yeah, the frame looks different where you're putting in the answers. It looks different from Canvas, but it's still inside of Canvas. Right? So don't worry about that too much. The books, the quizzes, the exams, watch the exams. That's 50% of your grade. These videos are highly recommended but optional. Come and see us if you want. But it might help you with the quizzes. Right? It might help you with the quizzes, and certainly it'll give you some things to draw on for the essays, because we'll discuss in much more detail. Okay, and there'll be one a week. So this one is going to cover module 1 questions. The next one will cover 2 and 3, because it's just one a week, like the quizzes. That's how the quizzes work. This is the first quiz that covers module 1. The next one will be 2 and 3. So 1 quiz a week, 1 video a week. Yeah, so that's it. All right, we've gone for about 10 minutes there. Hopefully that section will be shorter in future, but let's now go on to answering some of your questions. My throat's getting sore because I actually did this video one time and I did it straight into Canvas. Here's one for you. There's a facility, right, where you can like do an announcement, a video announcement, which is what I did last time. I've done it quite a few times without much of a problem. It takes quite a while to upload, but this time I did it for 45 minutes. I was very happy with it. I got onto some very beautiful topics, which I'll try and recreate for you here now in this redo of the video, but it went away and I couldn't get it back. And that is, so I'm using a different method here. I'm filming it straight onto my computer. And so hopefully that's a bit more stable than Canvas is. All right, but if I have a sore throat, I apologize. I've still got to go to an in-person class as well today with my sore throat. All right, no sympathy for me. Here we go. So where did I start last time? I think I started here. Okay, here's where I started. This one got 2 upvotes. Let me introduce your questions a little bit. The questions that you're doing, that's really, it's going to influence the quiz questions, what I put on the quiz, and it's obviously going to heavily influence this video. The reason why I'm using Beagle, the main reason, I suppose, there's a couple of other things as well, but the main reason is that I can, Beagle does it. Beagle automatically puts it into categories. So I can go through the categories and choose a couple of questions from each, or one from each, or one or none from that one, because it's a silly category. But from the good categories, I can take a couple of questions, maybe. Which means that I give you a little bit more of a broader overview of the different readings that we'll do in this video. In answering your questions, right? Because I'm discussing your questions. I'm not giving a general overview. Incidentally, no, I didn't tell you this. Very quickly, at the bottom of the modules page, you'll see like a bunch of videos that I made for this class, an earlier iteration of this course. It introduces a lot of the readings that we'll do in this class, but not all of them. Right? Those videos will introduce different readings, and some of the readings you'll recognize as being readings that work. So you might want to have a look at them. It's not mandatory. It's one of those optional things. You don't have to do it. Again, if you're reading the book, you're understanding, that's great. But those videos will contain some information, I think, quite good information about some of the readings that we'll do. So that's there for you if you're interested. Okay. But on those videos, if you hear me say, "Oh, I'm looking forward to seeing your midterm on the 5th of August or something like that," that's obviously any reference to any assignments in those videos is is old and past and null and void and everything. Don't take any notice. Just whatever's in Canvas, that's what we're doing. If it's on those videos at the bottom, that's not what we're doing. Okay. All right. So I just went there and got a quick drink. Bring a drink with me. Diet tonic water. My throat's super dry. All right. So let's see. Number 2. Here's the first question that we'll deal with. Should be a pretty straightforward one and a pretty fundamental one as well. So a good question. Even after finishing the reading, the whole concept of the pluralist theory versus the unitary theory is over my head. Can someone break them both down into something simpler or give a more simple example? Is it the difference between a democracy and a monarchy, or am I missing it entirely? It's not the difference between a democracy and a monarchy. Let me give a sort of extreme what is it called? Sort of cartoonized, what caricaturized? Caricatured. Yeah, maybe that. Caricatured the representation of the pluralist theory versus the unitary theory. The much more nuanced and much more detailed and more realistic theory is in the reading. Okay, but just to sort of give you somewhere to start at, what we've got on one side we've got Samuel P. Huntington, who is putting forward what Katzenstein is calling, at least, a unitary theory, right? A unitary theory of civilizations, right? That there are a set number of civilizations in the world, and that each are different, and that each inside of themselves are relatively coherent, cohesive. They have, the people in the civilizations, the regions, the countries in the civilizations have similar views and similar principles, and that they have different ones from the other units, right? The other civilizations who are themselves internally consistent and coherent, and people in them think roughly the same things, and they have the same religions and the same practices and all those things, right? That's what Katzenstein is to some degree. And again, this is a caricature, right? This isn't that I'm giving here, right? This is not, it's not straightforward an attack as this, right? This is too simplistic, but it is simplistic, and that might help to explain where it's coming from. So the idea is, okay, Samuel P. Huntington has this unitary theory where civilizations are real and they exist and they have internal consistency. On the other hand, Katzenstein says, no, that's not what civilization is like. Civilizations are fluid. They have different groups in them, different principles. The different groups have different principles, and they have different wants and interests and desires, and they compete with each other, and they move away, and they travel off. What does he say? They go over the mountains and over the plains to escape taxes and to escape conscription into the army and that sort of thing. So that's the pluralist theory, right? Is that people might belong, or civilizations might contain more than one group. They might have conflict within them, right? They won't be as cohesive and as coherent as Huntington likes to think. That's more the pluralist theory, right? So Katzenstein is the pluralist theory, Huntington is the unitary theory. It's not really to do with the type of government that you have, or a democracy or a monarchy. It's not really to do with that. It's to do with the cohesiveness. How similar are the people and the cities and the groups, religious groups or social groups or any other groups that are inside those civilizations. And I suppose as well, at a more fundamental level, like how easy it is to identify different civilizations. In the pluralist theory, right, it might not be, for Katzenstein, it might not be very clear, right, where one civilization ends and when the other one starts, whereas Huntington thinks that he can just about map it out. At least that's the accusation. So that's breaking it down. That question got a couple of upvotes, and so there's at least a couple of other people who were unclear on that. Thank you for asking the question. It is fundamental. Don't though, in an essay, the response that I give is it's probably okay, it's probably good, but for it to be excellent, you want to be closer to what Katzenstein is saying and closer to what Huntington is saying, because the thing, like the unitary theory of Huntington, like there's an argument like Huntington recognizes that civilizations change and shift. He recognizes that some civilizations come and others go. He recognizes that countries can move between civilizations. He recognizes that there might be some conflict within civilizations. That's a good one for the quiz. He recognizes all of that. So, so Katzenstein's critique of Huntington, it has to be taken in light of the fact that well, the one, it's more nuanced than I'm giving it credit for. It's a little bit more canny than I'm giving it credit for. But also that, like, if Katzenstein, in calling it a unitary theory, and in, you know, he might not be giving it full justice. But he has, I think there's a political reason behind it. Well, maybe I'm attributing intentions to Katzenstein that I don't fully know that he has, but well, he does allude to it. Here's the beauty of Katzenstein. I saved it till the end of the last video, but we're kind of in the middle of this video, right? So if you've made it 20 minutes, then you get the reward here. This is the beauty of the Katzenstein, right? But Katzenstein sees civilizations and the inside of civilizations as pluralist, right? So there's more than one group. And he also sees that these groups probably vie for power, right? Some of them at least, right? Vie for power over the other groups. They vie to be the, I mean, just think of elections, right? Elections in the United States. Imagine the United States on its own as a civilization. Of course, for Huntington, it's the core state of the Western civilization, which is, you know, civilizations are much bigger than countries usually, except in the cases of China and I think India constitute their own civilized. Certainly China, he says, does. It's a civilization masquerading as a country or something like that. But let's just talk about the United States, since I assume we're mostly familiar with the United States. So there's different groups who are vying for power in the United States, who are vying to be the leaders of the United States. Right? For Katzenstein, Huntington's thesis, his unitary theory, his clash of civilizations theory, is quite useful for some of those groups in their efforts to become the leaders. Why? Because here we go. If we let's pretend I'm a group, or a leader of a group that's a political group in the United States that's vying for power. Here's what I say. I say, look at what Samuel P. Huntington is telling us. He's explaining about civilizations. And he says that there's these many different civilizations, and one of them is the Western civilization. And it has certain principles and values and practices and the West that define the civilization. Well, look, that's us. That's me and my group. We are the ones who define Western civilization. We're who Huntington's talking about, and look what he says. He says we're in a clash of civilizations. He says that there's other civilizations out there that want to have conflict with us, that we're in conflict with, we're locked in conflict with them. And so you better rally around. Here we represent the proper Western civilization, the proper United States civilization, if that's what we're saying. The proper Western civilization, give us your votes or your money or your support, give us your support, rally around us, and we'll help you, because look at some of these other groups. These other groups are not espousing Western values and principles. They're part of the enemy. They might be part of the Sinic civilization or the Islamic civilization, right? Which Huntington has also told us about. They too have values, but those values are different from ours. Right? And so, because we're in a conflict with them, you better pick a side, right? You better make sure you're on the right side of history here. That's, I think, and Katzenstein doesn't do it as sort of simplistically as that, perhaps, or as blatantly as that. But if you read again the Katzenstein piece with that in mind, you'll identify parts of his text where he's talking about the power, the political power that can come from Huntington's unitary theory, right? From his insistence that, hey, we have a clash of civilizations here. And Katzenstein wants to undermine the effectiveness of that argument, the argument that I just pretended to make as the leader of this political group, right? So Katzenstein wants to undermine that and say, no, look, civilizations have always been diverse, they've always been changing, they've always really been a conflict between groups internal to civilizations. We don't need to look outside. We don't need to look at external conflicts between civilizations. Every civilization is already in conflict inside of itself, between differences. Difference is what's defined is normal for the inside of civilizations. There's another question that deals with that as well, I think, actually. Let me have a quick look and see if I can find out. Yeah, it's this question here. The book does a good job explaining what a civilization is and who exactly a single civilization can encompass. It's quite a good, I'm glad that you found that. Entities like the West or Islam or even Japanese or China can be considered civilization from my understanding. That's right. Those are some of the ones that Katzenstein says. Did I miss anything in my understanding of that part? Also, the book states that conflicts based on traditional sources of conflict like ideologies are fading. If I understood that statement from the book correctly, that I would have to largely disagree. I believe we see many ideological conflicts in the upcoming decades. I would like to know your guys' thoughts on this. Feel free to go and respond to that. It's a good question. I'm going to have a bit of a response as well. But what I'm going to do is I also chose another question that's quite similar to that one that I want to deal with at the same time. This is the other one. I'll have a quick drink. Excuse me. All right. The other one is this. Huntington's argument regarding civilization being paramount in conflict, even over ideological differences, right, does not appear to be very substantiated. Right? That's one argument that I'll deal with. There's another argument in the question. Sorry. Wouldn't these large differences in civilization inherently breed large ideological differences? And if so, would they not be intertwined from the beginning as opposed to separate? Here's what I'm hearing. How do we separate ideology from civilizations? If you've got different civilizations, you've also got different ideologies. So surely, why privilege one over the other? Why would Huntington say, not we? Why would Huntington say that civilizations are the most important factor in deciding where conflict's going to happen? Why wouldn't he say ideology? Surely they're intertwined. That's what I'm hearing. That's pretty much what you're saying. Okay. And I'm going to answer back as if I were Huntington. Right, I'm going to take his. This is very good, by the way. You should absolutely take on the authors that you're reading. You should criticize them. You should find. But I think as the instructor, I think one of the things I enjoy doing is sort of taking on their role and trying to answer the questions that you're asking them, as if we had them here. I think Huntington died, so we couldn't have him here. But okay. I'm actually going to, because once bitten, twice shy, I'm going to stop this video here, but it does continue in the second part. I just want to make sure that everything's okay with it before I spend another 20 minutes probably on this one. So switch over now to part 2 if you want to hear the end of my explanation about ideology versus civilization.